Hey Rangers fans, welcome to episode 2 of Bleeding Blue Shirts. Dave Maloney, John Giannone from Ottawa, hanging out a couple hours before the face-off of Game 2 of the Rangers season. And Davey, I guess for first impressions, we talked before the season started about how we thought it was going to be a pretty high entertainment value.
Yeah.
I think you could say with 10 goals scored, 6 by the Rangers, it was a pretty entertaining 60 minutes.
Yeah, it was. And I know we talked about the excitement of the season. There were a lot of, the anticipation was heightened, right? And I think for a lot of reasons, the bar was raised a little bit from last April 6th when you have, and we talked about the lottery and the acquisitions and stuff. And boy, oh boy, there was a buzz in the building that was really, and what was impressive to me, having been you for the night on the sidelines down on the ice, was the fact that everyone was in their seat when the national anthems went off. And it's been a long time since that's been such at the Garden. So the product played out to be a very entertaining affair, although in the words of David Quinn, it was not a Picasso by any stretch of the imagination. But you take your 6-4 win and you move on.
Yeah, see, but I said on the air after the game, it kind of was a Picasso because in a way it was ugly. It wasn't as artistic as it's let out to be, but for some people it was very worthwhile. Right. It was worth a lot. Yeah. And certainly for guys like Jacob Trouba, who made their debut, had 3 points, Mika Zibanejad with a 4-point night, and the couple guys who made their NHL debuts, especially Adam Fox, it had to have been a memorable and special.
Overwhelming, and let's not forget the bread man, Panarin. Right. He was, so when you looked at the game, the Winnipeg top players were dominant, but I'll tell you, our top players were pretty good too. So all in all, there were a lot of things to look at that we can probably go over, but there were a lot of things too to be excited about, and I think that's going to be the story over the course of the season, particularly as you hope there's a little more maturation as the season goes along.
All right, so let's hit on some of those. First and foremost, the fact that coming into tonight's game now, the Rangers are going to switch out all 3 of their defense pairings. We saw throughout training camp it was Shea Trouba. Much was made about the relationship on and off the ice between Shea and Trouba. And by the third period, there were different defense partners. And tonight, we'll see Mark Stahl with Jacob Trouba.
Well, there's a couple of things. I think, first and foremost, the opposition won't come any heavier, any faster, or any more skilled than Winnipeg came. They came hard, and their top players are all big bodies, and it was a pressuring situation for all 6 defensemen. So I think you've got to kind of put that in and give it a little context to the opposition. Had an opportunity to speak to Lindy Ruff after the second period, and we both right away acknowledged just how Winnipeg plays. That being said, you've got to counter. And the countering amounted to breaking up the pairs. I think Hayek only got a shift, one shift in the third period. Adam Fox was eased in a couple of different situations. So you start with the number 1 pair, and they're really, the jury's still out on whether Brady Shea is a top 4 or a top 2 defender. And it looked like he still has to kind of find his way around. So Mark Stahl will slot in with Trouba, and without having talked to any of the coaches yet, my thinking is with Mark, he's not going to be as mobile, and he's going to be in that one position that might work better for Trouba. That being said, I thought Trouba was tremendous. Oh, he was so good. Like, the points speak for himself. But when I watched, I only had time to watch the first 2 periods of the game. He was the only guy that won more battles than he lost. He was the only guy that made more tape-to-tape passes than he didn't. So all in all, when you look down below the points, and when it came to the physicality, so
yeah, I was going to say he's got a bit of a snarl around the puck,
snarl.
right? Yeah,
total snarl.
Some of that probably had to do with the fact that they were all his ex-teammates.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, for sure, he seems like he's very physically willing.
Boy, 24+ minutes, all situations. He really, at least opening night, came as billed. So to varying degrees, the defenders had their struggles. but Trouba certainly led the pack in a long way.
So let's touch on Brady a bit. You said that the jury's still out on whether he's a top pair defenseman. What do you think the Rangers want to see more from him that will allow him to at least get himself in the conversation of a top pair D?
Well, I think with Brady, not unlike a lot of guys who grow up with their superior skill being their mobility, there's a wonder about his hockey IQ. So the hockey IQ is to kind of understand a situation and kind of react or act accordingly. And I'm just not sure where that hockey IQ is. So in an evolving career, the experience should allow one to improve their hockey IQ. And I really do think that that's where Brady's issue. So a lot of times he overreacts to a situation or has to kind of play catch up to a situation where you would hope that due to the fact that he probably outskated a lot of situations as a kid.
Right.
It's hard to outskate players in the best league in the world anymore. Now, his skating ability will always allow him to have a spot in the league, but maybe it's not a top 2 spot. Maybe it's more a 3-4 spot, right? So when you look at top players, like top goalies, top defenders, top offensive players, there's not that many in the league.
Right.
There are 700 players in the league, and they, by and large, all deserve to be here. But when it gets to the top and you move your way down, guys will slot out. And I think the interesting thing about Brady as it evolves, he's getting to that point of his career. He probably still has another year. And it's a little bit like Chris Kreider. At a certain point, you've got to sign off on who he is.
This is who he is.
This is who he is, and it's pretty good. So he's a good player.
Right.
But maybe he's not what it looked like he could be when he was younger. And that's not deemed to be a criticism.
Right.
And I don't, because he's still a very good player in the National Hockey League. So I think for me, for my observations, that's where he is. You hope that thing, but in the reality, maybe you just have to sign off the fact that this is who he is. He's a pretty good player, but he's not quite who we either hoped he would be or thought he could be.
His defense partner tonight will be Adam Fox, and by his own admission, given the whole situation, NHL debut, native New Yorker, Rangers fan growing up, 30 people in the building.
And the opponent.
And the opponent, for sure. Certainly felt the nerves early on. Size up Adam Fox after one game and how you think that dynamic with he and Brady could work or not.
Well, I think that's going to be, it'll be interesting. So first and foremost, I thought it was very telling where he was the first. Now again, the Rangers took 2 penalties early. So that took Hayek and it took Hayek, Fox, Kakko,
right?
Chris Kreider, Bushnevich, took them all out of the loop. Now, and believe it or not, for 8-10 minutes against that team, when you don't get your feet wet, you know, it's like jumping into the high-speed lane when you just haven't had a chance to, you're just getting in that
learning how to drive. Yeah,
you're just getting on the on-ramp. You're in that on-ramp lane. And so, in fairness, there were circumstances, as you mentioned with Fox's game. Adam's game, so when he, if you recall, his first touch of the puck, he moved it to his partner and
cross ice
through the feet of Hayek. It came off the boards, and Winnipeg ended up with a quality chance.
Dangerous part, center of the ice.
Chance. And believe me, folks, you don't think, well, they're NHL players or this and that, but I'm telling you, it's an emotional time, and his game, is going to be that puck movement. It's going to be how he can get to the puck and how he can make a play, which you talk about exhibition. So Traverse City, he arguably was the best player in Traverse City, but that's a helter-skelter mess.
Right, and against some junior
players or players that are maybe going to be on a PTO or tryout. So that thought process. So then you get to camp, and at best case, you've got, well, the Islanders and Flyers threw a veteran lineup but they're going at half speed.
Correct.
when you look at that opening night pace.
And that's exactly what Adam Fox said in that first intermission interview. Like, even between preseason and regular season, it's so noticeable how different the pace is.
So what happened then, if you watch the game evolve, and again, I didn't get a chance to see the third period, but at the end of the second period, the Rangers had a power play, and it was he and D'Angelo on the point.
Right.
And now he got a little more time to handle the puck, and I thought he got better then. Just okay, now I can breathe a little bit,
right?
But he's still going. So they break up the pair, and you put Brady with a guy that's a little more cerebral. That has to be, and again, without that would be my look. Now I could talk to Lindy Robbins, like he'd say, "What the hell are you talking about?"
He would probably say it that way too. Yeah.
But I think when you get somebody now that's kind of gonna, now the opponent tonight probably won't come as they'll come as hard, but they're not coming as same size and the same
or skill.
Skill,
right. Not yeah.
So you're getting a little bit of a break that way. So it'll be very telling. Be very telling tonight to see how that all plays out. So when I look at it, and it's always easy to kind of analyze after the fact,
For sure.
right? It's like our golf game.
Yeah.
Right? Boy, oh boy, I
Yeah.
knew exactly.
I should have shot 62 and I ended up shooting 92.
Or
yeah.
I knew exactly what went wrong after I made the swing.
Right.
So now, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. So that leaves D'Angelo and Hayek.
Right. To further that point, that does leave D'Angelo and Hayek, and that was Libor Hayek's 6th NHL game. And as you said, after that initial play, that was an uh-oh moment, and not getting much time in the third period, one shift, what could be expected not only from Libor tonight, but from that pairing?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. Is that third pairing?
Yeah.
And that's where, when you look at the areas of the ice where the Rangers still have, on a relative basis, when it comes to the top teams in the league, it's your depth, right? It's how competitive and how are you when you get further down in the lineup, and that's a work in progress. And I think with Libor, for whatever reason, nerves may have played a factor, but you can't be in a position to get hit as hard as he got hit. Again, the opponent was coming that way, but boy, oh boy. And then it just, the thought process was not there with the speed. So, and the same thing with Tony. Tony had 2 really good games in the exhibition series, but now the big boys are coming to play. Now it's time. So that's a work in progress.
Question on Libor, because you talked about it. Again, very small sample size of 6 games in the NHL, but we've seen him get himself in positions where he gets splattered. As a guy who played 10 years in the league, how do you subtly, nuanced avoid that? How do you ensure that doesn't happen while still making a play?
Well, you just, I think you have to recognize that I've got to be quicker. I've got to be quicker. Like, some guys are innately quick. Like Tony D'Angelo is innately quick, right? Like he's quick. Other guys have to remind themselves that I have to think quick. I was
going to say, it's not only physically quick, it's mentally quick.
Mentally quick. You have to. There was a sequence in the second period where he had the puck along the boards, and he had time, but that time goes away quickly.
Right.
And the puck got turned over, and Winnipeg had a golden opportunity right on top of Hank when Libor had the puck, and I think he fell in love with the thought that he could do more, but it just closes so quickly. So when you see that moment, it's got to go. It's got to go, or you see that moment, I got to go.
Right.
And without being in the room or with the coaching staff, that would be the observation. But I always say, I think what we're seeing, they're seeing also.
For sure.
So but I'm there was a thought that maybe you want to put Smith back on the blue line and then maybe dress McKegg, and maybe let Libor. But I'm glad they're coming back to him, because I don't think it's a fair enough assessment with that opponent that comes so hard with so much skill. Tonight will be a little different story.
Right. So we're taking your questions here on our live stream, and Amanda P. is our moderator back in New York, and she's monitoring. So she says Justin B. on Twitter wants to talk about Buchnevich. How do you see him improving in Game 2, and what did you see in Game 1?
Well, again, I think the thing with him, either fortunately or unfortunately, the elephant in the room is going to be the rookie.
Yeah.
And that's Houghton.
Yeah.
Because he sure... I have a son, my son Danny, who was thought to be an old soul.
Right.
That has seen things, has lived a life before. And you looked at Kako, even when he came out for warm-up, I watched him. And it was like, you know what? This is not any big deal. I'm coming here to play. And I think with Pavel, with Bush, fortunately or unfortunately enough, that is the elephant in the room. Because I'm not sure it's going to be long. So it's not so much, again, in fairness, you know, his minutes early it just didn't have time. So, but he's certainly warranted more rope. And I think he just needs time to play in that early part of the game, get into the rhythm with playing with two elite players and get into the rhythm. And whether it's an opportunity to move the puck or shoot the puck or do the things that he's going to have to do to keep that spot.
All right, so that's on Buchnevich. Now talk about the old soul you were just referring to. Amanda sends us a question from Mickey on Twitter. Will Kako have growing pains adjusting to the NHL, and what's a reasonable expectation point-wise for him?
No, I think the circus is in town. We got a couple of clowns coming in, and Brett Segalis from the Post, and
a couple of Rangers beat writers,
beat writers. Folks are good guys. Are good guys. Don't get me wrong.
Good
do
guys.
A good job.
Air quotes on that.
As we sit here.
Yeah. So Kako, reasonable expectation, and do you expect growing pains? There has to be, right?
There has to be, but these are not. Everybody's gonna. First of all, we watched Hughes last night. Against Winnipeg, as the Devils blew a 4-0 lead there. And Hughes, a little different area of the ice. He's going to have the puck more, going to be a little more dynamic. But you know what? It's just, there's no critical areas to be concerned about this guy. Really, there isn't. I mean, it's just, you know, he may take a while before he has that breakout moment statistically.
Right.
But, you know, again, he got a little bit lost early because of the rotation. And I'm thinking to myself, at this point, to me, there's no reason why this guy can't be a penalty killer, too.
Yeah, eventually you'd think
eventually,
he will be, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with the...
He's just, he has a poise and a presence that belies 18 years.
Yeah. Good question from Tyler to follow up on that as well. He says, do you think adding players like Trouba and Panarin has taken some of the inherent pressure off a second overall pick coming to New York as an 18-year-old?
Well, no question. Even this guy coming to New York, if it was any other 18-year-old, normal 18-year-old, I think his presence, too, has taken some of the shine off of the acquisitions of Trouba and Panarin. I think it's a very interesting dynamic, given the fact of the discrepancy in career, where they are career-wise. It's just been a kind of a neat little mix that there are a lot of storylines here that not one person. So Shaddy comes at a time where it's, you know, you're making Shaddy the story, where it's probably not, that's not Shaddy's story. Going into the top spot and running a power play and this and that. Now you've got a combination of storylines here, so we don't even talk about Hank.
Yeah,
you don't even talk about Hank.
It's 18 minutes into our live stream, and we haven't even mentioned the name yet.
Name the goalie. So there are a lot of things here that add up to, you know, somebody can hide under beside in the shadow of somebody else, or not hide, because that's a conscious effort not to stand up. Right. But the story gets a little bit lost in the other stories. I think it's good.
All right. So now, by the way, there's no such thing as a normal 18-year-old. Just that doesn't exist. As parents of what were 18-year-olds, that does not happen. All right. Now we mentioned the goalie. Henrik Lundqvist gets his 450th career win. Sets a record for becoming, well, a team record, first Rangers goaltender ever to play in 15 different seasons for the club. Had his moments that I'm sure he was gritting his teeth and wanted back, but ultimately 43 saves and made a couple when Houghton scored to make it 5-4 that stood up.
Oh, yeah, there. And then Winnipeg power play late in the second. It was a Hank show.
Yeah.
And early, the 2 penalties early. So nothing, again, it's interesting. He was exhausted posting, right? I know we both get the opportunity to get into the locker room and speak to guys after. And at one point late in the second, he came to the bench, and it was almost a meditative, yoga-like breathing exercise while he was getting rehydrated. Or rehydrated?
Probably rehydrated because he was hydrated. Yeah. So isn't that an amazing thing to watch when the goalies come to the bench, because they rarely talk and they are literally in a different place. And it really is a great snapshot into just how mental that position is.
Really. He came and I were literally from as close as we are away from him, and he'd close his eyes, deep breathe, take his thing. It was really a really neat yogi-like meditative kind of trance thing he was almost in. And so I just think, and then post-game, I asked him right away about the 450th, and I congratulated him before he went on air, and he said, that really, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah. So there were a lot of things. I was just, we talked about Henrik before on our last get together. You just want good things to happen to this guy. So he got his 450th. He battled, as he said. Listen, I thought the only goal was really the Wheeler at 3-3, 9 seconds after the Rangers had taken a lead at 3-2. Right. That's the one he wanted to have back. But again, you go back and you look at that particular play, Wheeler had all kinds of room coming into the offensive zone. So, like anything, there are seminal moments in a goal, but at the end of the day, he probably wants that one.
Yeah. We mentioned Brett Houghton with the game winner, a guy that I'll know a lot of people in the Rangers room and organization root for. Good guy. Yeah. Really going to become, I think, a valuable player. And the way the Rangers scored that goal, getting the puck to the net, bodies there with Lemieux, who was put up on that line for that shift, and Houghton as well, really indicative of the way the Rangers would rather play than to see the flash and dash of guys like Zibanejad and Panarin, who are going to get their points. A word on Brett Houghton, and is that the kind of player he can and needs to be?
No, he's going, I mean, the flash and dash is only going to be good enough if it's supported. Right. Because the moments of that, most of the game is a grind-out affair, right? Most of the game, you're going to be 5-on-5, and those moments of brilliance have to be supported by the depth. And we referenced it before, so the deeper you are with people that are more capable of providing those moments, you're going to have a better chance. So that Brett struggled a little bit on the face-offs.
But he won the pivotal one.
Won the pivotal one. And then the guy that it looks like, even from practice yesterday, that Lemieux is going to get bumped up a little bit in the rotation.
Third line left wing minutes.
Right. And that was I talked to Jeff Gorton on cut-down day, and he mentioned that the coaching staff was going to have to work to find a little more time for Lemieux, although he took a bad penalty, and that's the thing that he's got to be aware of.
Correct.
But all in all, Brett is Houghton, and we talked about him. We'll continue to talk about his evolution. I think on a really good team, if he's your third line center, you're going to be in good shape.
All right, a word before we go on tonight's opponent, the Ottawa Senators. 5-3 loss to Toronto on opening night for them. This will be their home opener tonight, so the pomp and revelry of them in front of their home fans. Worst team in the NHL last year. They hire a new coach in DJ Smith, a one-time Islander draft pick from back in 1995, and a team really I don't even know if you can call it a transition. They're a team that doesn't have much on the roster to get excited about, although Brady Tkachuk is a heck of a player. We'll see him on the ice plenty tonight. But again, maybe a team earmarked for being the worst team in the league.
Yeah, this is a team you don't want to play early. And you know what? In fairness, the Rangers might be somebody you don't want to play early either. Right. you know, where they are, I think the Rangers are much further along in their growth than Ottawa is. They've got way more pivotal players at really good positions. But the thing with Ottawa, there's just so much going on here with the ownership and the building and keeping players at pretty aggressive signings with White, who's their top center iceman, and Thomas Chabot, who's their top defenseman.
Right.
So they've got a couple of bodies in place that are young to build around, but they are young. And their roster is a roster that you look at and you go, oh boy, this might be a real slogging event in late January, February, March.
Yeah, right.
And we saw a game in here last March when these two franchises got together, and that
set the league back a couple years.
Oh my God! I remember saying at the time that all they was missing was the free skate music. Because there
the skaters' walls.
Yeah, the skaters' walls. Because there was zero interest in the building.
Zero passion.
Zero passion on the ice. Yeah. But that will not be the case here tonight.
Yeah.
This is opening night, and it's early in the season. So how it works is a lot of times you want to get St. Louis early.
Right.
You want to get Nashville early. You want to get the teams that ran the table. Boston. You want to get them early.
Right.
You don't want to get Arizona. You don't want to get Ottawa. And listen, folks, to a lot of degree, the Rangers' perception, too, they're a little further down the food chain than maybe some people, maybe where they should be or shouldn't be. But the point is, this is a team tonight between you have to pay attention, particularly to you don't play for another week.
Right.
You want to try and you don't
do not want to
have
loss
that sour
to Ottawa. Linger
sour
for 6 days.
For 6 days.
Yeah, exactly. So. All right, 6:30 for the pregame show on MSG. Dave will be between the benches tonight. I'll be up in the booth with Joe Micheletti. Sam is off doing football. Don LaGreca and Pete Stemkowski on the radio. And as Dave said, Rangers don't play again for another, a week from tonight. So we will see you again on Bleeding Blue Shirts in 7 days. Next Saturday
afternoon.
Afternoon, right? Not a night
against
game.
The Edmonton Oilers, who will be a fun team to watch.
Absolutely. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next Saturday. Keep those questions coming.